Sid and Friends in the morning.
77 WABC.
Wednesday morning here on Sid and Friends in the Morning. Curtis Sliwa, Hall of Fame boxing trainer Teddy Atlas, the great writer Miranda Devine, Peter King, Scott LeBedo, maybe Tom Knipp as well. But we start our guest list this morning with a guy that I really like. Big, tough guy that spends his days and nights, and has done for decades, protecting the Jewish people. His name is Ronn Torossian. He's the chairman of Betar U.S. They've got 25 chapters throughout the United States. And right after, as I told you earlier, when the last 6 hostages were executed, including Hersh Goldberg, it was a weekend, and Ronnie called for a rally, which we did right outside the WPIX building on 42nd and 2nd. I showed up, Dove Hyken, and others. And it was a very successful rally for a weekend, Sunday morning, got on all the news channels. So that's where the relationship started with me and Ron. But folks know Ron for many, many, many years. He's in Israel this morning, and something happened at the University of Pittsburgh, and something happened to his group, which a lot of folks have a lot of explaining to do. We'll get to that. Ronn Torossian. Ron, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Good morning to you.
Nice to have you. So every morning at 7:15 on this show, I bring Curtis Sliwa on. And next year, we're going to have a mayoral run here in New York. I don't like Eric Adams. I used to. We were actually pretty friendly. If this sounds familiar, Ronnie, we were pretty friendly, not anymore. Curtis Sliwa is my guy. But before we get to your stuff in Israel, Curtis says to me that, much like me, there was a time when you were close to the mayor. In fact, he said you're the guy that brought him to Club Zero Bond, but everything after that fell apart. So what happened with you and the mayor?
Wow, you're putting me on the spot here, bright and early in New York City.
That's all right. Let's go.
I'm in the great city of Tel Aviv today, so I'll tell you that Curtis Lee was a friend for 35 years. As he can tell you, we've been fighting on the front line. I know him very well for many years. I'm a New Yorker, and I'm a Jew. And I believed that Eric Adams at the time was the best person to be in that place, because I thought he'd be tough on crime. I thought he'd be good on business. And sadly, he hasn't. And sadly, when it comes to the Jews are being hunted in New York City. New York City is today, sadly, not a safe place for Jews. And so I think a lot of us are very disappointed in everything that's happening in New York. It's become a place that isn't the safest place for Jews, and it's sad. And the buck always stops with the mayor. So like many others, of course, we're disappointed in the mayor. And yes, I did indeed take him to some of those places, and I know him very well. We no longer speak. But I know him very well, and I'm very, very disappointed I was handling New York.
Same way, same thing. We were good friends, dinners, Casa Cipriani, other places, lunches. We no longer speak, and he lost me. You'll appreciate this, Ronnie. Passover morning. Where am I? I'm standing outside of Columbia University. That day, Mike Lawler joined me, congressman out of Rockland County. Anthony D'Esposito joined me, congressman out of Long Island. Bruce Blakeman joined me, Nassau County executive. The great writer, actor, comedian Michael Rappaport joined me. And I held a rally. I held a press conference outside of Columbia University because the students, the Jewish students, were afraid to go take a piss. And you know what the mayor did that day? He didn't join me at Columbia. He went to Rome. And he never went to Columbia. And for a guy that collects big checks, during that Jewish Heritage Month at Gracie Mansion, and has all these idiot liberal Jews in New York sucking his feet, He doesn't do dick for the Jews. How about that?
I have to tell you, I have told him, and I will say it here, we don't care what he thinks about the hostages. He has zero say in the hostages. I don't care what the New York City mayor thinks about the state of Israel. We need you to protect the Jews in New York City. Last night, watching that march, I asked also, where were the Jews? Watching that march through Brooklyn. The police, sadly, have not only not taken the side of the Jews, there is a two-tier policing system that exists in New York City today. Whereas Jews go out and protest, and they're not allowed to go out and protest in the same manner that the anti-America crowd goes and breaks the rules, continually blocking streets, causing havoc and mayhem. And the job of any elected official is to as well protect the Jews. It is just not happening in New York, and it's terrible. It's terrible.
Can I get your endorsement for Curtis Sliwa right now, Ron?
I love Curtis. He's a friend for many, many years. I'd love to sit down further and talk with Curtis and see that we can win. I mean, obviously, I think that New York has I'm proud to be in Israel, happy to live in Israel as well. I want the best candidate to be somebody who is pro-police, pro-business, pro-safety. We got a lot of work to do in New York, and Curtis knows he's a good friend. I'm happy to sit down with him and chat specifics.
This is Ronn Torossian, and he's a great guy, brave guy. He's like the throwback to the good old days of the JDL and the ADL before they became a waste. Ronn Torossian, the chairman of Betar, over 25 chapters here in the United States. He's in Tel Aviv this morning. So, Ronnie, tell me, I know this story, but for the listeners, tell the story about what's going on. My daughter goes to college to a university in Wales, which is about 90 minutes outside of London. Long story short, my listeners know this story. We took my daughter Ava to Israel last year, and she took a picture with an IDF soldier, and she held his gun. So, all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter, the Palestine Students Organization on campus at Cardiff in Wales came after her. They doxed her, death threats for her, for me. And for the most part, the last year has been a misery for my daughter, who is still there because she's tough. She's going to graduate. She's going to be a lawyer. But they're making her life miserable on campus. So when I heard about this University of Pittsburgh story, it not that far from home for me and my daughter Ava, but tell the folks exactly what happened and how somehow Betar has been cleaned from the internet.
Just absurd that. So University of Pittsburgh, our member, one of our leaders, visited the University of Pittsburgh on a recruiting trip a few weeks ago. We posted something about mock beepers. So we give beepers out that we purchase on Amazon to mock terrorists, those who praise Sinwar, those who want to free Palestine, those who believe in jihad and killing Jews, of which there are many, many, many of them. They intimidate people, walk around with masks, block streets, commit violence. So Betar is an organization that we are not Jews with trembling knees. We stand up to anti-Semites. We stand up to Jew haters, not by writing them petitions, but by standing up in a proper, nonviolent way. We stand up, and we send beepers to anti-Semites. Students, SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, complained to the Pittsburgh police, who are currently investigating rabbis, currently investigating Jewish students. They're questioning people at the University of Pittsburgh about Zionism. It is simply outrageous.
Well, let me just stop you for a second. Hold on. These beepers that you send, unlike the beepers, he's such a genius, that Bibi and the Israelis sent to Hezbollah and blew their fingers and eyeballs out, these beepers are not explosives. These beepers are gag gifts. They are jokes that they are purchased on Amazon or eBay, as any of your listeners can now do, for $10. So, and I will tell you more than that. Let's just also not forget, these mock beepers are not being handed to random people. They are being handed to people who say they want to kill Jews, who say they want to destroy America. These are completely legal things. Why can you not walk around and hand out? I can't hand you out something that's purchased on Amazon. Completely asinine, completely ridiculous, completely absurd. We live in a world where everything is politically correct except Jews who choose to stand up for themselves. It is. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors, and so many of us out there say the Holocaust is happening again. The Holocaust is happening again. Where are we, folks? Where is our community? Where are the people who are standing up for decency? It is not enough that people like Michael Rappaport and Dov Heikind and Curtis Sliwa and Sid Rosenberg, these valiant Americans, valiant Zionists, stand up and fight.
just because there has been an election in the United States does not mean that the world problems that the Jewish people are facing is going to all of a sudden come to pass. University of Pittsburgh sent a letter to Meta because an SJP complaint happened, and therefore Betar has been suspended. It is completely SJP is an organization that openly supports October 7th, openly calls for more jihad and violence and free intifada, and the only way to stand up to hate is the same way that the great state of Israel does it. You stand up and you stand proud and you stand tough. And Meta suspended Betar. It is almost something like out of a bad movie. The police today are actively investigating Zionism, and the mainstream media is yet to cover it. Fox News is yet to cover it. Pittsburgh is actively investigating Zionists. How many times have we heard Shai Davide or Shabbos Kestenbaum or some of these great Jewish activists go and talk about the need for police intervention at some of these universities? Non-existent, as you mentioned, at Columbia and many other places. At the University of Pittsburgh, there's been 4 anti-Semitic incidents in the last few months, and they're investigating Jews about mock beepers. How many? It is the height of absurdity, of just horrible things happening. Anti-Semitism thrives at the University of Pittsburgh.
And we're just a couple of years removed from one of the worst massacres inside a temple. It was in that city of Pittsburgh where all those beautiful Jewish people were gunned down just sitting in shul that day, Ronnie. What really pisses me off is, so they're investigating the Jews for just a gag, right? They didn't hurt anybody. But yet, and they wipe the internet clean of the Betar work, the great stuff that you guys do. But yet, if you go on the internet this morning, Ronnie, they got no issue with Hamas. They're all over the internet. ISIS is all over the internet. Why are these terrorist groups allowed to stay on the internet, but Betar?
Beepers aren't okay. Mock beepers aren't okay. But free Palestine, jihad, from the river to the sea. There are, as I'm sure your listeners know, and you know where the Betar's organization is active in Europe and elsewhere. All over the internet, there are calls still to attack Israelis in different places with specifics. And all of these Jewish organizations, many of them, let's go and report this one, report that one. SJP, a organization that the ADL, which I'm no fan of, but the ADL says is a terrible, awful organization. Because of an SJP complaint, Meta banned a Zionist organization, suspended multiple Zionist organizations. It is the height of, absurdity. But, one of the challenges that we're facing is institutions like Meta, much like the media, have also become anti-Semitic. Before the war, there were many of us that thought, maybe we can change the media's mind and convince them. You can't, because the people sitting on the other side of the table from you at Meta and at countless, media outlets simply are anti-Israel. They're simply anti-Semitic. There are, many of these people that just don't believe in the Western way of life.
Well, let me ask you this on the way out, and believe me when I tell you, Vin News is going to hear this, the Jewish Voice, the New York Post. I've got Miranda Devine coming on in an hour, so a lot of folks are going to hear this. It will end up somewhere today, I promise you that, Ronnie. But on the way out, you mentioned, look, it wasn't enough that Trump won. We know Trump loves the Jews. No president has done more for Israel, not Reagan, not Truman, not anybody than President Trump. But you're right. What is that going to mean in New York City when Eric Adams, this moron, allows these pro-Hamas hateful groups to walk around the city like they own the place? So the question is very simple, Ronnie. How do we fix it? What has to happen before we can start to feel safe Jewish people in our own country?
So I would tell you that, first of all, we're in a long battle. And, one of the challenges is that Jews and our enemy look at the world very differently. This is a long battle that just because one election happened, people think that all of a sudden things are going to be, okay and simple. We can talk first about New York City. We have an awful local city council that even if by some miracle a good Republican wins in New York, or a guy, Curtis, or anybody else, the city council has awful laws. What has to happen today is, frankly, the same thing that happened during the Holocaust. Jews have to rise up. Jews like your daughter, who, of course, did a valiant thing as a strong, young Zionist woman. But that has to be times 100, times 1,000, times 10,000, and it means each of us. It doesn't mean just writing a petition. We ask, where are the Jews? Yesterday in Brooklyn, that was a horrible scene. To watch here from Israel, I have to tell everybody in New York, because I'm a New Yorker and an Israeli, Jews in Israel are terrified about Jews in the United States, terrified for the safety of our brethren in the United States. And if you read Jewish history, this didn't start a year ago. We have to be very, very, very careful. So I think that Jews have to organize. I think that Jews have to give a damn. And I think that there needs to be a radical sea change. Just because there's been an election that many are happy with the results, talk to Jews in Europe about what's happening. This is a long battle ahead of us. And to have SJP be able to ban a Zionist voice should terrify all of your listeners. What that means is that any of you can be silent if a organization that supports jihad can get you offline. It is the height of absurdity. Police are now knocking on doors in Pittsburgh, asking Jews about Zionism. Is Zionism a crime in Pittsburgh? Absurd. And we will have a group today on Capitol Hill. We will have a group today on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., speaking to lawmakers about this morning. These are times that are dark times in Israel. We're facing a terrible war. Worldwide, we're facing a terrible war. And, yes, the new administration has to be, they have a job to do in government. And, we are very optimistic and hopeful that they will, of course, do great work, as this administration did last time for Israel and the Jews. But the people, the organizations, the outside also have a job to do, which is very responsible to rise up and to take control in terms of Judeo-Christian values, doing the right thing at university, in the media, in the streets, for our children, all of these things.
Ronnie, you're a hero. What can I tell you, man? You really are. We need, like you say, my daughter, we need 1 million Ronnie Torossians out there. So enjoy Tel Aviv. Stay safe out there. Whatever you need from me back here in New York, just text me. This was a great appearance, very, very important appearance. I will do my best to make sure everybody hears this today. And you keep fighting, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Bye. Thank you.
God bless you. Ronnie Torossian right there. He is the chairman of Betar, over 25 chapters in the United States. Really a throwback to the good old days when the JDL would kick your ass right there in the street if you said something bad about a Jew. The ADL too. Those days are over, but not for Ronnie Torossian and Betar.